Jack Morrison pushed the throttle forward and watched the blue glow of Zentara Prime grow larger through the viewport of his cargo ship. The Lady Liberty was old but reliable, just like her captain. Jack had been flying the trade routes between human colonies and alien worlds for 15 years, ever since he left the Marines. His weathered hands gripped the controls as he guided the ship toward the massive orbital station that circled the galaxy's most important political world. Zentara. Station, this is cargo vessel Lady Liberty requesting docking clearance. Jack spoke into his comm unit. His voice carried the rough edge of a man who had seen too much combat and drunk too much cheap whiskey in spaceport bars. Lady Liberty, you are cleared for docking bay 7. Please prepare for inspection upon arrival. The response came from the station's traffic control in the crisp, emotionless tone that all Council worlds used. Jack's engineer, Bobby Martinez, looked up from his repair work on the ship's power core. Inspection? That's new. Usually they just wave us through. Bobby was young, maybe 25, with quick hands and a quicker mind. He had joined Jack's crew 2 years ago after his family's farm on New Texas was destroyed by raiders. From the navigation console, Lisa Thompson called out their approach vector. Station's bigger than last time we were here. They've added at least 3 new docking rings. Lisa was the best navigator Jack had ever worked with. She could plot a course through an asteroid field while blindfolded and still arrive exactly on schedule. Jack nodded as he maneuvered the Lady Liberty through the busy traffic patterns around the station. Zentara Prime was the seat of the Galactic Harmony Council, the governing body that supposedly kept peace between the hundreds of species scattered across the galaxy. The Council was dominated by 3 main powers: the Viridians with their telepathic abilities, the ancient Kithara, who had been traveling space for thousands of years, and the Draconis Federation with their powerful military fleets. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community. Earth had only made contact with alien species 50 years ago, and humanity had spread quickly across nearby star systems. Maybe too quickly, according to some of the older species. Jack had heard whispers in cantinas and trading posts that the Council was getting nervous about human expansion. The Lady Liberty settled into the docking bay with a gentle thud. Jack powered down the engines and began the post-flight checklist. Bobby, get the cargo manifest ready. Lisa, lock down the navigation computers. Standard security protocols. As they prepared to disembark, Jack noticed something unusual through the docking bay's observation windows. Council security forces were everywhere. Armored peacekeepers in their distinctive white and gold uniforms patrolled the corridors in groups of 4. Their energy weapons gleamed under the station's bright lights. "Captain, you might want to see this," Lisa said, pointing to her communications console. "I'm picking up a lot of encrypted traffic, military frequencies." Jack frowned. In all his years of trading, he had never seen this level of security at Zentara Station. "Keep monitoring those channels. Let me know if you hear anything about cargo inspections or trade regulations." The 3 humans left their ship and walked through the station's main corridor. The halls were crowded with beings from dozens of different species. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians glided past with their graceful movements. Short, stocky Corvin engineers hurried by carrying tool cases. A group of crystalline Christites chimed softly to each other in their musical language, but Jack noticed something else. The alien beings were avoiding eye contact with humans. When they passed other human traders or diplomats, the aliens would quickly look away or change direction. The atmosphere felt tense, like the moment before a bar fight when everyone knows trouble is coming. They reached the customs office where a Viridian inspector waited behind a metal desk. The alien's large, dark eyes studied Jack's identification papers while thin fingers tapped against the desk. Viridians were telepaths, but Council law prevented them from reading minds without permission during official business. "Purpose of visit?" the inspector asked in accented English. "Trade run. Picking up medical supplies for the colony on Kepler 442b?" Jack replied, handing over his cargo manifest. The Viridian's eyes flickered as he read the documents. "I see. You are aware of the new regulations regarding human vessels?" Jack's blood ran cold. "What new regulations?" The inspector's expression remained neutral, but Jack caught something in those dark eyes. Satisfaction? Fear? Resolution 2847 was passed by the Council 3 days ago. All human vessels are now restricted from Council space pending further review. Restricted how? Bobby asked, stepping forward. We've been trading these routes for years. Our licenses are all current. The licenses are no longer valid, the inspector said. He pressed a button on his desk, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Council security will escort you back to your vessel. You have 2 hours to refuel and depart. Jack felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came before combat. Years of Marine training had taught him to recognize danger, and every instinct was screaming that something was very wrong. What's this really about? What did we do? The inspector stood up as 4 Council peacekeepers entered the office. Their armor was heavier than usual, and their weapons were already powered up. The Council has determined that human expansion represents a destabilizing influence on galactic harmony. Your species refuses to conform to established protocols and continues to form unauthorized alliances with non-member worlds. Unauthorized alliances? Lisa said. You mean trading with people who want to buy our goods? I mean, the inspector's voice grew colder, encouraging other species to question. The natural order that has maintained peace for 3,000 years. Humans teach dangerous concepts like individual rights and self-determination. Such ideas threaten the stability we have worked so hard to achieve. Jack understood now. This wasn't about trade violations or paperwork problems. The Council was afraid of what humanity represented. While other species had found their place in the galactic hierarchy, humans kept pushing boundaries and asking uncomfortable questions. They traded with whoever they pleased, explored wherever they wanted, and worst of all, they inspired other species to do the same. Sir, step away from the desk, the lead peacekeeper ordered. His weapon was now aimed directly at Jack's chest. Return to your vessel immediately. Jack raised his hand slowly, but his mind was racing. Through the office's windows, he could see other human ships in the docking bays. Council forces were boarding them, and he could hear the distant sound of energy weapons firing. They weren't just restricting human vessels, they were seizing them. Bobby, Lisa, back toward the door, Jack said quietly. Nice and slow. As they moved, Jack's eyes met the Viridian inspector's gaze. For just a moment, the alien's telepathic barriers slipped, and Jack felt a flash of the truth. This wasn't just about controlling human ships. Resolution 2847 was the first step in a plan to remove humanity from space entirely. The Council had decided that humans were too dangerous to exist. Alongside other species, the peacekeepers escorted them back through the station corridors, but Jack was already planning. His Marine training had taught him that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight. As they approached the docking bay, he could see that the Lady Liberty was surrounded by Council forces. Other human ships were being towed away by security vessels. Captain, Lisa whispered, the communication array on Dock 12 is unguarded. If we could reach it... Jack nodded slightly. He had seen it too. The array was powerful enough to send a message across the galaxy. If they could warn other human colonies about what was happening, maybe some of them could prepare for what was coming. When they reached the docking bay, Jack made his choice. Now! He shouted. The 3 humans scattered in different directions. Jack dove behind a cargo container as energy bolts sizzled past his head. Bobby sprinted toward the Lady Liberty's loading ramp while Lisa ran for the communication array. The peacekeepers were caught off guard by the sudden movement, giving the humans precious seconds to reach cover. Jack pulled out his sidearm and returned fire. The familiar weight of a weapon in his hand brought back memories of combat zones on distant worlds. But this time he wasn't fighting for a government or a cause. He was fighting for his species' right to exist in the galaxy. Bobby reached the ship and began the emergency startup sequence. The Lady Liberty's engines roared to life, drowning out the sound of weapon fire. Lisa had made it to the communication array and was frantically typing on the control panel. All human vessels, all human colonies, Lisa's voice echoed through the station's speakers. This is an emergency broadcast. The Council has declared Resolution 2847. Human ships are being seized. They want to remove us from space entirely. Jack fought his way toward the communication array, laying down covering fire as more peacekeepers arrived. He knew they only had moments before the station's main security forces arrived. When he reached Lisa, she was still broadcasting. "Tell them," Jack said, grabbing the microphone. "Tell them we won't go quietly." His voice carried across the galaxy, reaching human colonies, trading posts, and military bases. 3 months had passed since Jack Morrison's broadcast from Zentara Station, and the galaxy had become a much more dangerous place for humans. The Lady Liberty drifted silently through the asteroid belt of the Ga system, hidden among the floating rocks and ice. Jack had chosen this place carefully. The asteroids blocked most sensors, and the system was far enough from Council space to avoid their patrols. Jack floated in the ship's small cargo bay, welding repairs to the hull. The Lady Liberty had taken damage during their escape from 3 Council warships 2 weeks ago. Bobby Martinez handed him a new welding rod while Lisa Thompson monitored the sensors from the bridge. "Contact approaching from Sector 7, Lisa," called over the intercom. "It's the Midnight Runner." Jack smiled for the first time in days. The Midnight Runner was captained by Amy Rodriguez, one of the best smugglers in the galaxy. She had been running illegal cargo past Council checkpoints for years, long before humans were banned from Council space. If anyone could help them, it was Amy. The sleek black ship slid between the asteroids and docked with the Lady Liberty. Amy Rodriguez stepped through the airlock, her dark hair tied back and her brown eyes sharp with intelligence. She wore the practical clothing of a spacer, but Jack could see the hidden weapons under her jacket. "Jack Morrison," she said, extending her hand. "I heard your broadcast. Half the galaxy heard your broadcast." "Amy Rodriguez," Jack replied, shaking her hand. "Good to see you're still alive." Amy's expression grew serious. "Barely. The Council's been cracking down hard. They're not just going after human ships anymore. They're targeting anyone who trades with us or helps us. 3 of my best contacts have been arrested." Bobby emerged from the engine room, wiping grease from his hands. "How bad is it out there?" "Bad," Amy said. "The Council's calling it Operation Clean Sweep. They're systematically hunting down every human vessel they can find. Some ships have been destroyed, others captured. The crews disappear into Council prison worlds." Jack felt a cold anger building in his chest. "What about the colonies, the settlements?" "That's why I'm here," Amy said. She pulled out a small data pad and activated a holographic display. "I've been in contact with other human captains. We're forming a network. Call it the Free Traders Alliance. We're helping evacuate people from the colonies that can't defend themselves." The hologram showed a map of human space. Red dots marked colonies that had been attacked or abandoned. Yellow dots showed settlements under threat. Green dots represented colonies that had declared independence from the Council and were fighting back. New Colorado, Kepler 442b, Ross 128. Amy pointed to the red dots. All hit by Council forces in the last month. They're not just restricting trade anymore. They're removing humans from space entirely. Jack studied the map. "My sister Katie lives on New Colorado with her family. Last I heard they were still there." Amy's expression softened. "Jack, New Colorado was hit 6 days ago. Council forces attacked the main settlement. Most people escaped, but what?" Jack's voice was deadly quiet. "There were casualties. I don't know about your sister, but I can find out." Jack turned away from the map. Katie had 2 young children, Ben and Sarah. They were just kids, innocent of any crime except being human. The thought of Council forces attacking a settlement full of families made his hands clench into fists. "There's something else," Amy continued. "Paul Jenkins wants to meet with you. He's the former diplomatic attached to the Council. He escaped from Zentara Prime the day after your broadcast. What does he want?" "He has information about the Council's plans, and he thinks there might be a way to fight back." 2 days later, Jack met Paul Jenkins in an abandoned mining station in the Proxima system. The station had been used to extract rare minerals from the system's asteroids, but the miners had fled when Council forces began hunting humans. Paul Jenkins was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 5 years as humanities representative to the Council, trying to negotiate trade agreements and peaceful relations. Now he looked like a man who had lost everything he believed in. "Jack Morrison," Paul said, standing up from a makeshift table. "I've wanted to meet you. Since your broadcast, that message changed everything." "Changed it how?" Paul activated a portable holographic projector. "Your words didn't just reach human colonies, they reached other species too. Species that have been under Council control for centuries." The hologram showed reports from across the galaxy. Altarian workers were striking on their homeworld. Corvin engineers were sabotaging Council projects. Even some Christites had begun refusing to mine the rare minerals that powered Council technology. "The Council maintains power by keeping the member species divided," Paul explained. "Each species has their assigned role. Altarians provide agricultural products. Corvin handle manufacturing. Christites mine raw materials. The system works because no one questions it." "Until now," Jack said. "Until now. Your broadcast reminded them that they don't have to accept their assigned roles. That they can choose their own path." Amy leaned forward. "That's all very interesting, but how does it help us?" "The Council still has the biggest fleet in the galaxy." Paul smiled for the first time. "Because fleet loyalty isn't as solid as they think. I've been in contact with junior officers from several species. Many of them are starting to question orders. Some are even willing to help us." Before Jack could respond, Lisa's voice crackled through his comm unit. "Captain, we have a problem. Long-range sensors are picking up Council ships entering the system. A lot of them." Jack was already moving toward the docking bay. "How many?" "At least 20 vessels. Led by a Draconis heavy cruiser." Amy cursed it in Spanish. "That's General Thane's ship. He's the Council's troubleshooter. They only send him when they want something completely destroyed." The 3 humans ran to their ships and began emergency departure procedures. As the Lady Liberty's engines came online, Jack could see the Council fleet on his sensors. They were moving fast, scanning every asteroid and abandoned station in the system. "They're not just looking for us," Paul said from his own ship. "They're looking for any sign of the resistance network." Jack made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running toward the system's edge, he turned the Lady Liberty toward the inner planets. "Amy, Paul, follow my lead. We're going to Proxima Station. Are you crazy?" Amy's voice came through the comm. "That's a civilian station. Thousands of people live there." "Exactly. The Council won't attack a civilian target." Not yet, but Jack was wrong. As they approached Proxima Station, they could see Council warships surrounding the massive orbital platform. Energy weapons were already firing at the station's shields. "This is General Thane of the Council Peacekeeping Force," a cold voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Proxima Station is harboring human terrorists. Surrender the fugitives or face the consequences." Jack watched in horror as the station's shields began to fail. The platform was home to over 50,000 beings from dozens of species. Most of them had nothing to do with the human resistance. "We have to help them," Bobby said from the engineering station. "With what?" Lisa replied. "We have 1 cargo ship and 2 light freighters. They have a battle fleet." Jack stared at the tactical display. The Council fleet was positioned to prevent anyone from escaping the station. But there was a gap in their formation, a narrow corridor that led toward the outer system. "Amy, Paul." "Listen carefully," Jack said. "We're going to create a distraction. When I give the signal, punch through their formation and get to the evacuation ships." "What about you?" Amy asked. "I'm going to give them something to think about." Jack flew the Lady Liberty directly toward General Thane's flagship. The massive Draconis cruiser was 3 times the size of his cargo ship, but Jack had learned something important during his years in the Marines. Sometimes the best weapon was courage. He opened a channel to the Council fleet. "General Thane, this is Jack Morrison. You want humans?" Come and get us. Leave those people alone. The response was immediate. Energy bolts filled the space around the Lady Liberty as the council ships turned to engage. Jack's ship shook under the impact, but he kept flying toward the flagship. Now, Jack shouted. Amy and Paul's ship shot through the gap in the council formation, leading a convoy of evacuation vessels away from the dying station. Jack followed, his ship barely holding together as council weapons tracked his movements. The Lady Liberty's engines were failing when they finally reached the safety of the outer system. Behind them, Proxima Station was a burning wreck. Thousands of innocent people had died because the council wanted to capture 3 human fugitives. As they regrouped in the darkness between stars, Jack realized that everything had changed again. The council was no longer trying to simply remove humans from space. They were willing to commit genocide to achieve their goals. Paul, Jack said over the comm, you said some council officers might help us. How do we contact them? I have a few names. Why? Jack looked at the wreckage of Proxima Station on his sensors. Somewhere in that debris were the bodies of families who had done nothing wrong except live in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because it's time to stop running, Jack said. Time to start fighting back? Amy's voice came through the comm. What did you have in mind? 6 weeks after the attack on Proxima Station, Jack Morrison stood in the hidden command center of Asteroid Base, Freedom 1. The base was carved deep inside a massive rock in the Tau Ceti system, far from Council patrol routes. What had started as a simple hiding place had grown into something much larger. The command center buzzed with activity. Humans worked alongside beings from a dozen different species, all united by their opposition to Council rule. Amy Rodriguez's coordinated supply runs from a bank of communication screens. Paul Jenkins met with alien representatives who had traveled across the galaxy to join their cause. Even Bobby Martinez and Lisa Thompson had taken on new roles, training other crews in combat tactics and navigation. Report, Jack said as he approached the central planning table. Amy looked up from her screens. The Christites of Rigel 7 have agreed to join us. They're providing rare minerals for ship construction. The nomadic Vanguard fleets are offering 50 ships and crews. Paul Jenkins smiled as he finished his conversation with a tall crystalline. The younger Cathara are starting to question their elders. 3 of their exploration vessels have secretly offered to share intelligence about Council fleet movements. Jack studied the holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas under heavy Council control. Yellow zones showed contested systems where fighting had broken out. Green zones represented worlds that had declared independence or were actively supporting the resistance. What about the Altarians? Jack asked. That's our biggest victory, Paul replied. Their homeworld has declared neutrality in the conflict. They're refusing to provide food supplies to Council forces. The Altarians were known throughout the galaxy for their peaceful nature and their skill at growing food in harsh environments. Their decision to stop feeding the Council military was a major blow to the enemy's logistics. Bobby Martinez joined the group, his face grim. We got word from the New Colorado refugees. Jack, I found your sister. Jack felt his heart stop. Is she alive? She's alive. So are the kids. They're on Haven's Rest with about 3,000 other refugees from the colony. Haven's Rest was a neutral trading world that had declared independence from the Council decades ago. It was one of the few places in the galaxy where humans and aliens could meet safely. I need to go there, Jack said. Jack, it's dangerous, Amy warned. Council forces are watching all the major trade routes. If they catch you, They won't catch me, Jack said firmly. And we need to do more than just hide. It's time to bring all these different groups together. Time to create something the Council can't ignore. 3 days later, Jack piloted a small scout ship through the hyperspace lanes toward Haven's Rest. The journey took him past the ruins of human colonies and the wreckage of destroyed ships. Each site reminded him of what the Council had done. To his people, Haven's Rest was a massive space station orbiting a gas giant. The station had been built by traders and merchants who wanted a place to do business without Council interference. Ships from dozens of species docked at its ports, creating a colorful mix of cultures and technologies. Jack found his sister Katie in the refugee section of the station. She was thinner than he remembered, and her eyes carried the haunted look of someone who had seen too much violence. But she was alive, and so were her children. "Jack," Katie said, running to embrace him. "I knew you'd come." Ben and Sarah, Katie's children, were 9 and 7 years old. They had been forced to flee their home with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Jack knelt down to hug them, feeling a renewed anger at the council for what they had done to innocent families. "Uncle Jack," Ben said, "are you really fighting the bad aliens?" Jack looked into the boy's eyes. "I'm trying to make the galaxy safe for everyone, so you and Sarah can have a home again." Katie pulled Jack aside. "Is it true what they're saying, that you're building an army?" "Not an army," Jack replied. "Something better. A coalition of species who believe in freedom." That evening, Jack attended a secret meeting in the station's lower levels. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to discuss the growing resistance movement. The meeting was led by Paul Jenkins, who had become the diplomatic face of the human resistance. "Friends," Paul began, "we face a common enemy. The Council claims to maintain peace, but they maintain it through oppression. They assign each species a role and forbid them from changing. They silence dissent and crush independence." A Corvin engineer named Hammerstrike spoke up. "For 300 years, my people have been forced to build weapons for the Council. We want to build homes and cities, not tools of war." A crystalline Christite chimed in their musical language. The translation device rendered their words. "The Council takes our mineral-rich bodies and uses them as mining equipment. We are not tools, we are living beings." Jack listened as representative after representative told similar stories. The Viridians were forced to use their telepathic abilities to spy on other species. The Altarians were required to grow food for Council worlds while their own people sometimes went hungry. Even some of the younger Cathara were tired of being told they could only explore systems approved by the Council. "What do you propose?" asked a Vanguard fleet commander named Star-Rider. Jack stood up. "We form a new organization. Not to replace the Council, but to give species a choice. We call it the Galactic Liberation Front." Paul Jenkins activated a holographic display showing their proposed structure. Voluntary membership. No species is forced to join or remain. Each world chooses its own level of participation. And most importantly, no single species controls the others. The debate that followed was intense. Some representatives worried about Council retaliation. Others questioned whether such a diverse group could work together. But gradually, a consensus emerged. "The Council has given us no choice," Hammerstrike said. "They attack civilian targets, they destroy entire colonies. If we do not stand together, we will fall separately." One by one, the representatives agreed to join the Galactic Liberation Front. By the end of the meeting, they had the support of over 30 species and their commitment to contribute ships, resources, and personnel to the cause. As the meeting ended, Jack received an urgent message from Amy Rodriguez. "Jack, you need to get back here immediately. We have a problem." Jack said goodbye to Katie and the children, promising to return when the galaxy was safe. The journey back to Freedom One was tense. Amy's message had been coded, which meant the situation was serious. When Jack arrived at the asteroid base, he found Amy waiting with a familiar face. Elena Vasquez, a commander in the Earth Defense Force, stood beside her in full military uniform. "Commander Vasquez," Jack said, "what brings you to our little hideout?" Elena's expression was grim. "The Council has blockaded Earth. No ships in or out. They're demanding that Earth surrender all human military vessels and recall every human colony ship." "What did Earth say?" "The President told them to go to hell." "But Jack, they're not just blockading us, they're planning something bigger." Elena activated a secure communication device. "We intercepted this transmission 3 days ago." The hologram showed General Thane addressing a gathering of Council military commanders. "The human problem requires a final solution. Resolution. 2847 was only the beginning. Phase 2 will eliminate human colonies throughout the galaxy. Phase 3 will deal with Earth itself. Jack felt a chill run down his spine. They're planning genocide. It gets worse, Elena continued. Our intelligence sources report that the Council is preparing to use an ancient weapon called the Silence Maker. It's some kind of orbital bombardment system that can sterilize entire worlds. Amy cursed in Spanish. How long do we have? The weapon requires unanimous approval from all 3 major council powers. The Draconis Federation is already on board. The Cathara leadership is wavering. If the Viridians agree, they could activate it within weeks. Jack looked at the tactical display showing council fleet movements. The enemy was positioning their forces around every major human colony. They were preparing for a coordinated strike. That would wipe humanity from the galaxy. We can't let that happen, Jack said. What can we do? Paul Jenkins asked. Even with all our new allies, we don't have the firepower to stop the Council's main fleet. Jack studied the star charts, his mind racing. The Council's strength was also their weakness. They controlled the galaxy through fear and overwhelming force. But they had made one crucial mistake. We don't need to defeat their entire fleet. Jack said, we need to stop them from using the Silence Maker, and I know how to do it. He pointed to the holographic display of Zentara Prime. The weapons control systems are on the Council homeworld. If we can capture or destroy them, the weapon becomes useless. Amy stared at him. You want to attack Zentara Prime? That's suicide, not attack, Jack corrected. Liberate. Poll, how many species are represented on Zentara Prime? Poll checked his diplomatic files. Hundreds. It's the most diverse world in the galaxy. Including species that hate the Council, but haven't dared to rebel? Yes, but ... Jack smiled grimly. Then we're not just going to attack Zentara Prime. We're going to give every oppressed species in the galaxy a chance to strike back at their oppressors. The Council thinks they can use fear to control the galaxy. The space around Freedom 1 erupted in fire and light as Council warships emerged from hyperspace. Jack Morrison watched from the bridge of the Lady Liberty as general. Thane's flagship led a massive fleet against the asteroid base. Energy beams cut through the darkness, striking the hidden rebel stronghold. All Liberation Front vessels, this is Morrison, Jack broadcast to his fleet. Execute evacuation protocol Charlie. Get our people out of there. The rebel fleet was a strange sight. Human cargo ships flew alongside crystalline Christite vessels. Sleek Altarian transports moved with the angular warships of the Vanguard fleets. Corvin engineering ships bristled with improvised weapons. It was the most diverse military force the galaxy had ever seen. Amy Rodriguez's voice crackled through the cum. Jack, we can't save the base. Too many council ships. We're not trying to save it, Jack replied. We're buying time for the evacuation. Once everyone's clear, we head for Zentara Prime. Elena Vasquez's Earth Defense Force cruiser moved into position beside the Lady Liberty. Jack, are you insane? We have maybe 200 ships? The Council has thousands. They have ships, Jack said. We have something better. We have people who believe in what they're fighting for. The battle around Freedom 1 was brutal but brief. The Liberation Front fought with desperate courage, but they were vastly outnumbered. One by one, Jack's ships broke away from the fight and jumped to hyperspace. The asteroid base exploded in a brilliant flash, taking several Council vessels with it. As the last rebel ship escaped, Jack opened a channel to General Thane's flagship. This is Jack Morrison. You destroyed our base, but you didn't destroy our cause, General Thane's cold voice responded. Morrison, you are a terrorist and a threat to galactic peace. Surrender now, and I will make your death quick. I have a better offer, Jack replied. Meet me at Zentara Prime. Let's settle this where it started. Jack cut the transmission and turned to his crew. Bobby, how long to reach Zentara Prime? At maximum speed, 18 hours, Bobby replied from the engineering station. Lisa, plot the fastest course. Send the coordinates to all Liberation Front ships? As the rebel fleet jumped to hyperspace, Jack knew they were flying toward the most dangerous battle of the war. Zentara Prime was the heart of Council power, protected by massive orbital defense platforms and the largest military fleet in the galaxy, but Jack had learned something important during his years of fighting the Council. Sometimes the strongest fortress had the weakest foundation, and the Council's foundation was built on the oppression of hundreds of species. Paul Jenkins joined Jack on the bridge as they traveled through hyperspace. I've been in contact with our agents on Zentara Prime. The response has been incredible. What do you mean? Paul activated a holographic display showing reports from across the Council homeworld. Your broadcast 3 months ago reached every corner of the galaxy. Now, with news of the Liberation Front's formation, resistance cells are activating on Zentara Prime itself. The reports painted a picture of growing unrest. Altarian dockworkers were sabotaging Council ships. Corvin engineers were introducing faults into defense systems. Even some Viridian telepaths were refusing to scan for rebel agents. There's more, Paul continued. Wisdom Keeper, one of the senior Kithara counselors, has made contact with us. She's opposed to using the Silence Maker. Jack felt a spark of hope. Can she stop the activation? Maybe. The weapon requires unanimous approval from all 3 major Council powers. The Draconis Federation has already agreed. Most of the Viridian leadership supports it. But if Wisdom Keeper can convince enough Kithara to vote against it, then we stop a genocide, Jack finished. The Liberation Front fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zentara system. What they saw took their breath away. The system was crawling with Council warships. Massive dreadnoughts patrolled the outer planets. Cruiser squadrons moved between the asteroid fields. And surrounding Zentara Prime itself were the largest orbital defense platforms Jack had ever seen. My God, Elena whispered. How many ships do they have? Lisa checked her sensors. I count over 800 vessels, plus the orbital platforms. Amy's voice came through the cum. Jack, this is suicide. We should retreat and find another way. But Jack was studying something else on the sensors. Look closer, those ships aren't all military, he was right. Mixed in with the Council warships were civilian vessels from dozens of species. Cargo ships, passenger liners, mining vessels, and exploration craft, all fleeing from something. They're evacuating the system, Bobby realized. The Council is pulling out their own people before they use the Silence Maker. Jack felt a cold fury building in his chest. The Council was planning to destroy not just human colonies, but any world that had shown sympathy for the rebellion. They were willing to commit genocide on a scale never before seen in galactic history. All Liberation Front vessels, Jack broadcast. Change of plans. We're not just here to stop the Silence Maker. We're here to liberate every enslaved being. In this system, the rebel fleet split into 3 groups. Elena Vasquez led the military vessels toward the orbital defense platforms. Amy Rodriguez commanded the fast attack squadrons targeting Council supply ships. Jack led the main force directly toward Zentara Prime. The battle began as soon as the Liberation Front entered weapons range. Energy beams lit up the darkness as hundreds of ships engaged in deadly combat. Council vessels fired their powerful weapons at the rebel fleet, but the Liberation Front ships were faster and more maneuverable. Corvin engineering ships, target the defense platform's power cores, Jack ordered. Crystite vessels, use your mineral hulls to ram through their formations. Vanguard fleets, hit their command ships. The diverse rebel fleet used their unique abilities to maximum advantage. Corvin engineers who had been forced to build the defense platforms knew exactly where to strike. Crystite ships, with their diamond-hard hulls, could survive direct hits from Council weapons. The nomadic vanguard had spent centuries raiding and knew how to strike fast and disappear. As the battle raged, reports came in from across Zentara Prime. Resistance cells on the planet's surface were attacking Council facilities. Alien workers were rising up against their oppressors. The spaceports were in chaos as thousands of beings tried to escape the fighting. Jack, Paul's voice was urgent. Wisdom Keeper is transmitting from the Council chambers. The vote on the Silence Maker is happening now. On the main screen, they could see the ancient Cathara counselor addressing the council assembly. Her voice was old but strong as she spoke against the weapon. For 3,000 years, we have maintained peace through wisdom, not through genocide. The Silence Maker represents everything we claim to stand against. I call upon my fellow counselors to reject this path of destruction. But her words were drowned out by the angry voices of the Draconis representatives and the cold logic of the Viridian speakers. The vote was close, but the genocide faction was winning. We have to reach the council chambers, Jack said. If they activate that weapon. Elena's voice came through the cum. Jack, the defense platforms are falling, but General Thane's fleet is moving to intercept you. You'll never reach the planet's surface. Jack looked at the tactical display. Thane's massive dreadnought was leading a formation of Council's most powerful warships directly toward the Lady Liberty. They had minutes before the enemy fleet reached them. Bobby, all power to engines, Jack ordered. Lisa, plot a course straight through their formation. Are you crazy? Lisa asked. They'll blow us apart. Not if we give them something else to worry about, Jack replied. He opened a channel to every ship in the system, both Rebel and Council. This is Jack Morrison to all beings in the Zentara system. The Council claims to represent peace and order, but right now they're voting to commit genocide against any species that dares to seek freedom. On every screen in the system, images appeared of the Council's attacks on civilian targets. The destruction of Proxima Station, the bombardment of refugee camps, the burning remains of human colonies. They call us terrorists, but they're the ones who attack children. They call us dangerous, but they're the ones preparing to sterilize entire worlds. Every being watching this broadcast has a choice. Stand with tyranny or stand with freedom. The effect was immediate. Across the Council fleet, ships began powering down their weapons. Alien crew members were refusing orders to fire on the rebels. On some vessels, outright mutinies broke out as younger officers turned against their commanders. General Thane's dreadnought continued its attack, but now it was alone. The Lady Liberty and a small group of rebel ships broke through the Council lines and dove towards Zentara Prime's atmosphere. Paul, can you contact Wisdom Keeper? Jack asked as they entered the planet's atmosphere. I'm trying, but the council chambers are heavily shielded. Jack guided the Lady Liberty through the burning skies above Zentara Prime's capital city. Below them, the streets were filled with fighting as resistance cells battled council security forces. The spaceports were in flames, and government buildings were under siege. As they approached the massive council complex, Jack saw something that filled him with hope. Beings from dozens of species were marching on the building, demanding an end to council rule. The revolution wasn't just happening in space. The Lady Liberty flew straight toward General Thane's massive dreadnought as its main guns powered up for the killing shot. Jack Morrison gripped the controls tightly, his eyes fixed on the enemy ship's bridge. He had seconds before those weapons would turn his ship into space dust. Captain, Bobby Martinez called from the engine room, the hyperdrive is still functional. We could jump away. No, Jack replied firmly. Too many innocent people will die if that weapon activates. Sometimes you have to make a stand. But as the dreadnought's guns began to fire, something unexpected happened. Energy beams struck the council flagship from behind. Amy Rodriguez's strike squadron had arrived, their small ships dancing around the massive vessel like angry wasps. Did you really think we'd let you die alone? Amy's voice came through the cum, filled with determination. More ships appeared around the dreadnought. Elena Vasquez's Earth Defense Force vessels opened fire on the enemy's engines. Corvin engineering ships used their cutting tools to slice through the flagship's armor. Even Paul Jenkins had armed his diplomatic vessel and joined the attack. General Thane's ship shuddered under the combined assault, but it was still the most powerful warship in the Council fleet. Its point defense system swatted away several rebel ships, and its heavy armor absorbed most of the incoming fire. This is pointless. General Thane's voice boomed across all frequencies. You cannot stop what has already begun. The Silence Maker vote is complete. In moments, every human colony will burn. Jack felt despair creeping into his heart, but then Lisa Thompson's excited voice cut through the chaos. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission from the council chambers. Wisdom Keeper is broadcasting." The ancient Kithara counselor's image appeared on screens throughout the system. Her aged face was calm despite the battle raging around the planet. "Citizens of the galaxy, the vote has indeed concluded. By the narrowest of margins, the Council has rejected the use of the Silence Maker." Jack's heart leaped with hope, but Wisdom Keeper wasn't finished. However, General Thane has refused to accept this decision. He claims emergency powers and is attempting to activate the weapon without Council approval. The transmission showed images from inside the Council chambers. Draconis soldiers were fighting with Kithara peacekeepers. Viridian telepaths were trying to stop Thane's agents from reaching the weapon controls. The carefully maintained unity of the Council was fracturing before the galaxy's eyes. "All loyal Council forces," Wisdom Keeper continued, "I order you to stand down and return to your home systems. The war against humanity ends now." The effect was immediate. Across the Council fleet, ships began powering down their weapons and withdrawing from combat. Alien crews who had been forced to fight were laying down their arms. Some vessels even turned their guns on Thane's remaining loyalist ships, but General Thane's dreadnought continued its attack. "Traitors and cowards," Thane screamed over the "Come, I will save this galaxy from the human disease even if I must do it alone." The flagship's engines roared to life as it broke away from the battle and headed toward the planet's surface. Thane was making a desperate run for the Silence Maker control center in the Council complex. Jack followed, pushing the Lady Liberty's engines to their limit. Behind him, the remaining Liberation Front ships gave chase. The race for the planet's surface had begun, and the fate of billions hung in the balance. As they entered Zentara Prime's atmosphere, the city below was in chaos. Resistance fighters from dozens of species battled in the streets. Government buildings burned as oppressed. Workers finally struck back at their oppressors. The rigid order that had controlled the galaxy for thousands of years was collapsing. Thane's dreadnought crashed into the Council complex like a falling mountain. The massive ship's bulk crushed several buildings as it came to rest beside the Silence Maker control center. Emergency hatches opened and Draconis troops poured out, fighting their way toward the weapon controls. Jack landed the Lady Liberty in the plaza outside the complex. As his crew prepared for battle, he was surprised to see hundreds of beings rushing to join them. Altarian farmers carried improvised weapons. Corvin workers wielded their industrial tools like clubs. Even some Viridian telepaths had abandoned their traditional pacifism to fight for freedom. "For too long, we have been slaves in all but name," called out a Christite whose body gleamed like a living diamond. "Today, we choose freedom." The battle for the Council complex was fierce but brief. Thane's troops were skilled warriors, but they were vastly outnumbered by the liberated beings of Zentara Prime. Workers who had spent their lives maintaining the complex knew every corridor and passage. They led the rebels through hidden routes that bypassed Thane's defenses. Jack fought his way toward the Silence Maker control room, his old Marine training taking over. Beside him, Amy Rodriguez moved with the deadly grace of a smuggler who had survived countless firefights. Elena Vasquez coordinated the military assault with professional precision. They found General Thane in the central control chamber, standing before a massive console covered in alien symbols. His armor was scarred from battle, and his cold eyes burned with fanatic determination. "Morrison," Thane said without turning around, "you arrived just in time to witness the salvation of galactic civilization." Jack raised his weapon. "Step away from the controls, General. It's over." Thane's clawed hand moved toward the activation sequence. "You think your little rebellion changes anything? There will always be those who understand the need for order, the need for control." "Maybe," Jack replied. "But there will always be those who choose freedom over safety, who choose hope over fear." Thane spun around, his sidearm already firing. Jack dove for cover as energy bolts sizzled past his head. The two warriors circled each other in the control room, trading shots among the delicate equipment that controlled the galaxy's most terrible weapon. You humans are a disease, Thane snarled as he fired. You spread chaos wherever you go. You teach other species to question authority, to think for themselves. Such ideas will destroy everything we have built. Jack returned fire, his shots carefully aimed to avoid the weapon controls. Good, your order was built on the backs of slaves. Your peace came from the silence of the oppressed. The battle ended when Elena Vasquez appeared behind Thane, her weapon trained on the general's back. It's over, Thane. Surrender. For a moment, the Draconis general seemed ready to comply. Then his hand shot toward the weapon's emergency activation switch. Jack had no choice. His shot took Thane in the chest, sending the alien warrior crashing to the floor. As Thane lay dying, he looked up at Jack with something that might have been respect. You fight well, human, but this is not the end. Others will rise to restore. Order, maybe, Jack said quietly, but they'll face the same choice you did. Rule through fear or earn loyalty through justice. Thane's eyes closed for the last time. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had imagined. The old council dissolved completely, its member species, choosing their own paths for the first time in millennia. Some worlds formed new alliances based on mutual interests. Others chose peaceful isolation. Many joined the Galactic Confederation that Paul Jenkins helped establish. The Confederation was everything the old council was not. Membership was voluntary. No species was forced to conform to a single way of life. Trade and diplomacy replaced oppression and control. It wasn't perfect, but it was free. Jack stood on the observation deck of the new Confederation headquarters, watching ships from hundreds of worlds dock at the orbital platforms. His sister Katie worked in the diplomatic section, helping to draft treaties between species that had never spoken as equals before. Amy Rodriguez commanded the Confederation Defense Fleet, which existed only to protect member worlds from external threats. Elena Vasquez had returned to Earth to help integrate human forces into the new galactic structure. Bobby Martinez joined Jack at the observation window. Hard to believe it's really over. This war is over, Jack corrected. But there will be. Others, freedom is something every generation has to fight for. Lisa Thompson approached with a datapad. Captain, we have a request from the Exploration Committee. They want you to lead a mission to the galaxy's edge. There are whole sectors out there that have never been contacted. Jack smiled as he looked out at the stars. The Council had tried to outlaw humanity because they feared what humans represented. They feared the idea that ordinary beings could choose their own destiny. They feared the message that freedom was worth fighting for. Prep the new dawn for departure, Jack said. It's time to see what's out there. As his new ship launched toward the unknown regions of space, Jack thought about the journey that had brought him here. He had started as a simple cargo hauler trying to make a living. He had become a symbol of resistance when his people faced extinction. Now he was an explorer again, heading toward new worlds and new adventures. The galaxy was free and the greatest discovery of all was just beginning. Humanity had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall when ordinary people decided. They had had enough of being told what they could and could not do. The Council had thought they could outlaw humanity. Instead, humanity had outlawed oppression itself.